You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 5th of August 2025 on Monocle Radio. The Briefing, in association with Addis. Hello there and a very warm welcome to The Briefing, coming to you live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Emma Nelson, and coming up on today's programme.
It's the leaders of Texas who are attempting not to follow the law. They're the ones that need to be held accountable.
The governor of Illinois offers safe harbour to Democrats who left the state to avoid a vote on the redrawing of a map. We'll have the latest. Also ahead in the next 30 minutes, Australia picks Japan to build its naval frigates, saying no to the likes of Germany and Spain. We'll find out why. Also the latest on Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro, who's currently under house arrest. Fernando Augusto Pacheco is here to explain why. Faye.
Yes, indeed, Emma. We'll discuss how Bolsonaro's house arrest will affect Brazil-US relations and more.
Thank you for that. Plus the latest business news, and the director of Copenhagen's International Fashion Fair will join me to tell us about this year's event. All that's coming up right here on The Briefing with me, Emma Nelson. And we begin today's briefing with the story that 50 Texan lawmakers are currently on the run from the authorities. Their misdemeanor is to have left the state instead of taking part in a vote that would change the map. They're worried that plans by the Republicans to redraw some borders would create 5 more Republican-leaning seats in the US House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. Well, to bring us up to date on the chase, I'm more joined now in the studio by Monocle's contributing editor, Andrew Muller. Good afternoon, Andrew.
Good afternoon.
So what's gone wrong here, then?
This is all tremendously good fun. What has occurred is that the Republicans are attempting to engender some good old-fashioned gerrymandering. They want to redraw the electoral map of Texas to their advantage ahead of late next year's midterm elections, because the House of Representatives is very close. This is the federal House in Washington. It's currently 219 Republicans to 212 Democrats with 4 vacancies, and there's 38 districts in Texas. So if the Democrats picked off a few in Texas, which is likelier than not in any presidency's midterm, never mind when the president is not terrifically popular, Texas would be the Democrats' likely pathway to retaking the House. So the Republicans are trying to redraw the map. They can't do that without a 2/3 majority in the state House, which the Democrats have deprived them of by fleeing to Illinois.
I mean, it's a brilliant idea. I mean, you say it's quite fun, and it is wonderful. Just absolutely every aspect of this is marvellous. It raises a smile. The fact that the Democrats just fled, and then instead of dealing with this in quite a sort of a gentle and democratic and diplomatic way, there are now civil arrest warrants being issued or could be issued to try and get them back. But no one knows where they are. We think they're in Illinois.
We think they're in Illinois, and certainly Governor Pritzker of Illinois has solemnly promised to harbour any Texas Democrats who seek sanctuary in Illinois. The idea of actually arresting them is fairly symbolic. As you correctly point out, these are not arrest warrants attached to criminal charges. At best, they would empower Texas state troopers to deliver them back to the Capitol to do their democratic duty. But, tremendously good fun as this all is. There is a possibly sinister undertone. Donald Trump has been talking for 10 years about rounding up and arresting his real and imagined political opponents. And perhaps if you wanted to be paranoid about this, you could suggest that there's some sort of effort here by Texas Republicans to shift the Overton window in that direction to make it seem an acceptable thing to do. But mostly I suspect that this is Governor Abbott realising he's been somewhat outmanoeuvred and trying to salvage something from it.
And the interesting thing is it's raising wider questions about any attempts in other states to try to redraw districts. And we have Illinois and Texas lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers from there. You mentioned the governor of Illinois. They have basically said, well, if you try this in Texas, we will try this absolutely everywhere else where there is sort of Democrat control.
Well, indeed so. And the thing is about gerrymandering, as it is known, in honour of Vice President Elbridge Gerry, who, when governor of Massachusetts, drew an electorally advantageous district that looked a bit like a salamander, so their gerrymander. Both parties have always done this. The two reasons to do it are either you try and reduce the voters available to an opponent, or concentrate your own voters in particular districts. And some of the results, if you look at a map, are absolutely ridiculous. There is a Democrat district in Texas, the 35th, which was drawn by Republicans to reduce Democratic influence. The 35th district of Texas, it really is worth looking up on the map. It links districts in Austin and San Antonio, which is like having a UK parliamentary constituency which has a bit of it in South London and a bit of it in Southampton.
Right, both of which would have rather wildly different political positions.
Well, certainly different concerns, and because they're in different cities. But the Democrats do this themselves. There is one, in fact, in Illinois, which snakes, I think, through 3 or 4 different cities. That would be the Illinois 13th, which includes pockets of Democrats in Champaign, Springfield, and East St. Louis.
What's interesting about this for me is that it raises two enormous questions when it comes to politics in America. Which is the erosion of democracy, which is what the Democrats are accusing the Republicans of trying to do, and the erosion of doing one's duty, which is what the Republicans are accusing the Democrats of trying to do.
Both of those things, and that is the danger here, that again you remove that American democracy gets further away from any idea of bipartisan consensus building and just becomes more and more entrenched partisan bun throwing. Because yes, it is possible that Democrat states may think, well, if it's good enough for Texas and it's good enough for here. We've heard threats to that effect from New York, Washington and California, some of which do assign redistricting, as it's known, to independent commissions, but could take that back from independent commissions and do it themselves. But of course, the point is of gerrymandering to entrench political division or entrench your own support. And it potentially just divides America more and more by reducing further and further the number of actually contestable seats.
How does this end?
Really, really hard to say. The nightmare scenario is basically that everybody just thinks, well, if the Texas Republicans are going to do it, then I'm going to do it as well. And you basically reduce elections to the House of Representatives to a total charade, i.e. everybody lives in a safe Republican or safe Democratic seat and nothing ever changes. And in most House of Representatives elections, actually not much all that changes as it is. The other thing we can hope for, of course, is that for the Republican Party decides to start acting once again like responsible grown-up Democrats, by which I mean small d Democrats, not capital D Democrats, but I wouldn't hold my breath.
Interesting to see at what point the Democrats with the capital D will have a venture back home. Andrew Muller, thank you so much for joining me in the studio. The time here in London is 8 minutes past midday. You're listening to The Briefing with me, Emma Nelson. Let's have a summary of the day's other news headlines. Here's Laura Kramer.
Thanks, Emma. Thailand has approved the purchase of 4 new fighter jets days after its deadly border clash with Cambodia. The jets, made in Sweden, will cost around $600 million. The deal is part of a long-term plan to upgrade Thailand's air force. U.S. prosecutors are opening a case into claims that Donald Trump's political opponents tried to frame him over Russia ties before the 2016 election. A grand jury will now review the evidence and decide if charges should be filed. And a zoo in Denmark is asking pet owners to donate animals like rabbits, guinea pigs, and even small horses to feed its predators. The zoo says the animals will be gently put down before being given to its lions and tigers. It's part of what the zoo calls a natural and sustainable feeding plan. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Emma.
Thank you very much indeed, Laura. Now, Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro has been placed under house arrest following claims he violated a ban on using social media. Mr. Bolsonaro already wears an electronic tag as part of his ongoing trial on charges of plotting to remain in power after losing the presidential election in 2022. Well, to tell us why he's now been given absolute boundaries of home and no further, Monocle senior correspondent Fernanda Augusta Pacheco is with me now. Hello, Faye.
Hello, Emma. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Probably better better than Bolsonaro because I'm allowed out of the house. Why has he been told he's got to stay put?
Well, this last Sunday, there were several protests, pro-Bolsonaro protests across the country, including the big city, São Paulo, attracted, I believe, almost 100,000 people. And Bolsonaro, he did speak to his social media followers, but that he was not allowed to do that because, as we know, he was wearing an ankle monitor since the 18th of July. And the reasons for that, because according to the Supreme Court and Alexandre de Moraes, they had some reasoning that Bolsonaro could escape the country. And let's remember, he's currently on trial for allegedly plotting a coup in 2022 as well. So that's the reason for the ankle monitor and for his house arrest as well.
Now, Brazil has a reputation for being politically divided to the extreme. When you have half and half, either Lula or Bolsonaro. The reaction, therefore, to Bolsonaro's house arrest has been what?
It's been very much polarized. And I have to say, I was reading an interesting column on Folha de São Paulo today, that there are a lot of people actually that don't like Alexandre de Moraes' actions and also don't like Bolsonaro because, of course, Bolsonaro deeply divisive, but so is Alexandre de Moraes. Listen, I understand we are in a democracy. Of course, I'm fully supportive of our Supreme Court, but some say that they have perhaps a little bit too much power. And it is the case. If you look at Brazil's history since our redemocratization, since the late 80s, so many of our former leaders have been in jail, including Lula himself in 2018. So I think our Supreme Court can be political as well. So it's not simply just a matter, of Bolsonaro and what he did. But I understand those concerns as well, especially coming from the right.
And we have the fact remains is what, since Brazil was re-democratized, Jair Bolsonaro has become, the fourth president or former president to be arrested. And it does seem like a revolving door of office criminality or office or accusations of wrongdoing. And it's something that never, ever stops. I mean, President Lula spent time in jail as well. What is it that keeps forcing Brazil to be stuck in the cycle?
Well, it's as I said, it's a deeply polarizing country, and I think let's talk about the U.S. It's also a deeply polarizing country, but I don't think, in a weird way, Emma. Listen, I hope my quote will come out all right. I think because we are in Bolsonaro did perhaps allegedly plot a coup in 2022, and he's going to court about that. Trump did something similar, and some of his, but he's not going to court because I think the justice in the U.S. works in a different way than Brazil. Perhaps ours work is perhaps too democratic. It works so well that creates another layer of problems. I hope I'm explaining myself correctly.
Yeah, the sort of checks and balances that stop everybody from being thrown into jail the minute that they leave office.
Absolutely.
You mentioned a moment ago the idea of Donald Trump and his part in all this. And the fact that Bolsonaro has an ankle tag because he was a flight risk, that they thought that he would go and seek safe harbour in the bosom of the White House. What does this mean in terms of the wider relationship between the United States and Brazil? Brazil still dancing around the threat of tariffs from Donald Trump.
The highest in the world, right? 50%, which, it will happen. But then forget about trade talks now. I think Trump already said that this decision of Bolsonaro's house arrest, he says that the Supreme Court in Brazil is threatening Brazilian democracy. So I think it's going to be very hard for the next steps for the trade talks. Having said that, and I did speak about this on the briefing yesterday, although we have the highest tariffs in the world, there are 700 exemptions, including oranges and planes. So of course, Trump also knows that he doesn't want to affect the American customer a lot, who might drink the orange juice and suddenly see the spike in price. That's not going to happen because oranges have an exemption and other products as well. So, yes, I don't believe we will have positive trade talks in the future. But, Trump also knows about the American customer.
Fernanda Augusto Pacheco, thank you for joining me in the studio. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. 21:14 in Canberra, which is where we head now, because Australia has chosen a Japanese company to build the next generation of naval frigates, favouring Mitsubishi Heavy Industries over bids from the likes of Germany, Spain and South Korea. This is Japan's first deal to export warships. So to tell us more, I'm joined now from Canberra by Jennifer Parker, who's a former naval officer and expert associate at the National Security College at the Australian National University. Very good evening to you, Jennifer. Thank you for staying up so late for us.
Hi, Emma. Thank you so much for having me on.
Right. Well, let's press on. Tell us about this contract. Why did Japan win?
So look, Australia hasn't actually signed any contracts yet, but what they have done is selected one ship from four. So originally in February 2024, the Australian government announced that they were going to expand the Australian Navy's surface combatant fleet, so the frigates and destroyers that the Navy uses. In December 24, it was down selected to two, so a German bid from TKMS and a Mitsubishi bid from Japan. Why was Japan selected? Look, the Australian government says that Japan was selected because the capability, which is the upgraded Mogami-class frigate, was the best capability. Now, it is a very modern designed vessel. It has significant endurance, 10,000 nautical miles, they're saying. Despite its size, which is about 5,000 to 6,000 tonnes, it is actually quite small to crew. So a lot of its capabilities are automated. And Mitsubishi is saying the crew is about 90 people. And most modern frigates now have a crew of between 150 and 200. So that's quite significant. I think also the commonality of some of its missile systems and combat systems with US missile combat systems, which also make up the backbone of the Australian fleet, have been key elements. And so certainly it looks to be a decision based on the capability. But I think also the the growing strategic relationship between Japan and Australia, which has rapidly evolved in the last 10 years, was probably also a factor.
Tell us a little bit more about the reason why, when you touched on it just a second ago, about why Australia needs to renew its frigates.
Well, I mean, the first thing to think about when we think about Australia is Australia has no land borders, right? So it is an island nation. It has the third largest exclusive economic zone in the world. It's the fifth largest user of shipping. And all of its trade is through the maritime domain, right? We import 91% of our fuel. So we have a huge dependency on the maritime domain. The Royal Australian Navy currently has 10 surface combatants. So our surface combatants are made up of some destroyers that are quite new, but also 7 older Anzac-class frigates that were built between 1996 and 2006. They are getting pretty old. The average life of a frigate is 20 to 30 years. And unfortunately, over the last nearly 15 years, the government has not been making decisions. So governments of both flavours haven't made decisions about replacing them. So we've gotten to the point now where it's urgent to replace them. The second element, though, is that the decision to expand the surface combatant fleet. So normally Australia operates between 11 and 12 frigates and destroyers. That's kind of been the way since the 1960s-ish. This government decision last year, which is kind of reconfirmed by the selection of the Japanese frigate, is about expanding the size of the Australian Navy to operate 20 surface combatants. And why is that the case? Well, it is because of Australia's dependency on the maritime domain, but it's also because regional security is deteriorating, and Australia is very concerned about that.
And when you mean regional security is deteriorating, by which do you mean China?
Look, I actually mean a couple of things. Of course, I do mean China, and I think you can't underestimate or understate China's aggression in the region. So, largest navy in the world, they're using that navy to harass Taiwan. We're seeing increasingly large joint exercises in the vicinity of Taiwan every few months. We're seeing harassment of the Philippines in the South China Sea within the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines. We even saw earlier this year a circumnavigation of Australia for the first time ever by a Chinese naval task group. Again, I mean, they can do that latter one lawfully, but we're seeing this expansion, we're seeing this aggression, and so that is destabilising the region. But I think there are other trends too, and I think one is that more broader than China, we are seeing states resort to the use of force to settle their differences. We've seen that in some of China's behaviour, but we've also seen that in the Middle East. We've seen that in Europe, in Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And we've actually seen that in the Indo-Pacific between Pakistan and India, and most recently Thailand and Cambodia. So I think those two trends, coupled with the breakdown of the multilateral system, has really made Australia reassess its strategic situation. It is concerned about those things, and it is specifically concerned about China's aggression in our region.
Jennifer Parker, thank you so much for joining us on Monocle Radio. You're listening to The Briefing.
Funny how many people get these things wrong. I go into a lot of jazz clubs and I go, what made you build it like this?
Everyone's got an opinion about design these days. Join us on a journey to cut through the noise as we sit down with some of the design greats.
It's possible to really improve how we live and how we work through design.
Make sure you tune in every Tuesday at 2000 London time for Monocle's weekly design show, Monocle on Design, or find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Just coming up to 12:21 here in London. Let's get the latest business news from Bloomberg. I'm joined by Ewan Potts. Good afternoon, Ewan. How are you?
Hello, Emma. Very well, thank you.
Good to have you with us. BP, a very busy week for it news-wise. Its results are out and they're up. Its chairman is saying that its chief executive, is saying that they're going to have to completely rethink its business and costs. But they just so happen to have found an awful lot of oil off the coast of Brazil.
Yes, good timing for the news cycle, you could probably say. Yeah, decent set of results from oil major BP. The London-based company is seeing its shares rising today. The company's in the midst of a transformation, or you could call it a re-transformation. You remember that rebranding they had a few years ago with the green flowery logo, Beyond Petroleum, we were told that BP would stand for. Well, now perhaps it would be more accurate to call it Back to Petroleum. The company is ditching many of the green investments it's spent the last few years making. Investors were not happy with the returns from all these moonshot green projects, and it is refocusing on oil and gas. As you mentioned, that massive discovery of oil in Brazil, the biggest discovery in 25 years by the company, that is seen as a positive for investors. Of course, when it comes to the oil market, some interesting comments we had from the chief executive today on Bloomberg Television. He says that oil supply next year from non-OPEC producers will likely be flat. Now, that's going to be good news for OPEC. They've been looking to increase market share. The oil price currently about $69 a barrel. You would call that kind of a moderate oil price. Not enough for some companies and some countries, but for consumers, probably you might call that a fair price. So a sort of middling oil price. And it looks like perhaps oil supply will not grow too much next year. And there have been worries that there will be oversupply in that market. So a balanced market, you could say, for next year.
And indeed, in that context, when there is going to be a drop in supply, that means that the new chief executive BP has said he's going to be hardcore focused on returns, value and efficiency. The sort of the ESG stuff's really got the flower has wilted a bit, hasn't it?
Yes, it certainly has. BP was actually one of the most aggressive in the sector, and its move towards hydrogen and some of the other green technologies, which many people had hoped would fuel the energy market over the next few years. But a lot of these things are quite tricky to make money in, and a lot of them are early stage technologies, whereas digging oil out of the ground is something which the company has a proven track record of doing, and that's what investors wanted it to get back to, and that is its new plan.
Let's talk about Tesla. Sales, I think it's halving in the UK this month at least, but dare I say it, that Elon Musk isn't doing too badly out of it.
Yeah, in terms of sales, it's been a pretty ropey year for Tesla. The company is short of new models, and the political actions of its chief executive have really affected sales, particularly in Europe and in some parts of America as well. But the company has just given him a pay award. It's $30 billion. Not a bad pay award, you could say. You remember the controversy last year when a Delaware court blocked an even bigger payout. So the company's been trying to work out how it's going to get a large amount of money to Elon Musk. The company told shareholders that it was a first step towards a good faith payment. The company is keen to secure Elon Musk's attention. Of course, Musk has been the driving force behind Tesla, but he's also got his fingers in rather a lot of pies, and that's one of the reasons why the company wanted to give him this massive pay award. An interesting feature piece actually on the Bloomberg terminal today about one of the lesser known companies which Elon Musk is involved with, and that is the Boring Company. The headline of the piece is called "Elon Musk's Boring Company is Turning into a $900 million Flop." Now, if you remember the Boring Company, it was set up about 10 years ago to revolutionise urban transport. And as a Londoner, I thought this was a rather exciting prospect. The idea is to dig these tunnels under cities and then cars could whiz along them at high speed rather than at 6.5 miles an hour or whatever the speed we normally go at in London. But unfortunately, the hype of this company has not really come to pass. The company's actually just got one public project up and running in Las Vegas, which is an 8-mile loop, and only 4 miles are operational. It has permission to build much more in Vegas and indeed another number of other cities. But so far, they've just not managed to turn it into a commercial reality, which is a bit of a shame. Now, I've got a meeting with my boss, so I'm going to go and suggest that a very large pay award would keep my attention.
Yes, I think we all might. Ewan Potts, thank you so much for joining us on the line from Bloomberg.
What if your next big idea started with a better conversation? Monocle's Quality of Life conference is 3 days of sharp thinking and sunny hospitality set in the heart of Barcelona. We bring together architects, business leaders, urbanists and creatives to ask, how do we build better cities, communities and ways of living? Find out more and book your seat at monocle.com/conference.
Finally, on today's programme, we head to Copenhagen, where one of Europe's most exciting fashion events starts today. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined now by Sophie Dolver, who's director of Copenhagen International Fashion Fair. Good afternoon, Sophie. How is it where you are?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Well, it's extremely busy, but with a lot of great energy, a lot of people, a lot of nationalities has already arrived. So we are pleased and a bit tired already.
I know, it's one of those things that the adrenaline will get you through for the next few days. If you are a fresh visitor to the fair and you haven't had to pull it all together, what would you see this year?
So this year we are spanning across 30,000 square meters, filling up the entire Bella Center under the theme Walk in the Park. So you will see a mix of this urban jungle vibe with a red interpretation mixed with a digital element. Some of the special highlights we have this season is Diesel directly from Italy, that our special guests are bringing in a denim party, as well as G-Star from the Netherlands with their 4 meters tall denim gorilla. So we are having a lot of different brands with innovation, creativity, and more than 1,000 brands.
And the purpose of the fair is to do what? To find new opportunities and find new ideas in a climate at the moment, which I think is being universally accepted, is pretty challenging.
No, exactly. And that's exactly why we try to bring in more innovative community building, creativity. So it's not only collections and logos, and trying to show examples of how you can go together as a brand and a retailer and bringing in the community, because those brands that are doing those elements, those are also the brands that are doing quite well. And actually we see in the latest data that now the market is starting to turn around and growing a little bit. So we are a modern take on Tinder making between brands and buyers. But what we also try to put in is a bit of the festival vibe, Coachella, to get some energy into the buyers so they have a bit more fuel to walk around and explore new brands that they wouldn't discover normally being in Paris.
What is that secret magic combination which brings a brand and a buyer together and makes it work?
I think it's actually the perfect combination of both being a creative mastermind, but also thinking more business and going together with the retailers and really build the plans together. Because it takes two to make a team these days, and it's not enough to just selling your collection and then, cross your fingers and say bye-bye. So I think those brands that go together with the retail and build some exciting brand universes, again, bringing in the community to make it a bit alive, to make it more as an experience rather than just a normal shopping experience, are those that are really thriving in the market today.
Well, we wish you well for the next few days. Sophie Dolver there, coming to us from Copenhagen. And that's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest of thanks to all my guests and to the producer Laura Kramer and Ryuma Takahashi. Our researcher was Henry King. Our studio manager was Steph Chungu. The briefing is back tomorrow at the same time, but for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thank you very much for listening.